This is the queer faith perspective. Gay on gay hate over Gaza war and faith flares across social media. The ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict has created a rift between the LGBTQ+ community on social media platforms like Reddit. One user recently posted on the subreddit Gay Jews forum about being permanently banned from the subreddit LGBTQ for asking not to use the word genocide irresponsibly and to show any empathy for the Jewish victims. He asked about the possibility of experiencing the highest degree of anti-Semitism within the LGBT community. Other Reddit users reacted to the post. One said, "Too bad we Jews are excluded from the intersectionality, as we are from all anti-racist circles." Another post said, "The LGBT community has always been open to all unless you are Jewish, but maybe they'll accept you if you are a good Jew who self-flagellates and condemns other Jews." Even one of the gayest places on earth, South Florida, got dragged into the battle when the Aqua Foundation for Women found itself under scrutiny after apologizing for its executive director using a "from the river to the sea" hashtag in his demand for a ceasefire in Gaza. In the latest post, Brewer posted a clarification for his use of the allegedly anti-Semitic tag. However, not everyone was pleased with the clarification. People shared their opinion about Aqua's apology on social media. One post said, "We see your true colors, and an apology will never change that." Another wrote, "Aqua wants trans folks' faces, labor, and ideas at the table, until we're just a little bit too radical." This weekend, a lesbian-focused Reddit talked about how members were being removed over discussions of support of Israel or Palestine, and that the focus on LGBTQ+ views about other groups. One Reddit member wrote, "What a shock. As a community, LGBTQ+ people expect tolerance, respect, and more. But in our community, that doesn't include Jewish queer people." Oh, boy. I mean, where does one begin to talk about this, right? And, you know, I'm a big history person. I like to look at things from a broader sense of history. And I feel like people today are too myopic and on a very short history span of what is happening in this part of the world. And to really understand what is happening in this part of the world, you really have to go back in time to realize that this little part of the world, this small piece of land, has always been in this, you know, tumultuous state of who has what and who is where. So to understand the nuance of what's going on, you have to look at it from a transgenerational perspective and go all the way back to see that this piece of land has always been under either Egyptian control or under Assyrian control or Babylonian control. It was an actual kingdom for a while, and then it became under the Greeks, and then the Romans, and then the Byzantium, and then the Ottomans, the Turks, and then it's
the British,
and then the British.
The British, don't forget.
Yes, so it has been a hotly contested piece of land because it is in the center of all of these trade routes that are happening that connect, Africa to Europe to Asia. So, looking at it from a big history perspective, you can see that both sides have a lot to say about this. There is also, something that we cannot move away from, which is the generational memory of genocide when it comes to the Jewish people. The way that, yes, you can look at their reaction in any way, shape, or form, but you have to understand that when millions of your people are killed in places like Europe, you start to react in certain ways. You will take that step, whether right or wrong. Those steps have been taken. Now, and people look at it. They start to throw religion around, and don't throw religion around. Just keep it focused on the geopolitical situation, and then talk about it. And it's so complicated, and everybody is just saying things, and honestly, just most people don't do the research. Just read, do your research before you have an opinion, or just don't have an opinion if it doesn't affect you, if it doesn't touch you in a certain way. But I understand that people have opinions, and even with the the director of Aqua, he started speaking about it very early on and posting things on social media. And I appreciated that, because here's someone taking a stand. Here's someone talking about, yes, both sides have been hurt Let's look at this from a broader perspective. And unfortunately, that hashtag was used, and but then he apologized.
Right.
And in this cancel culture, people need to just understand that when people apologize, they learn something.
Mean it. Yes.
They mean it. So let's move
it's
on.
It's humbling to apologize.
Yes.
You don't want to do it.
No.
So if you do it, it's because you mean it.
Right. So I am
You see that there's something wrong with what you said, and you say, I'm going to fix it. I can't take it back, but I'm going to fix what I did.
I'm not going to do that again.
Right.
Right. And I am so proud of him for doing that.
Yeah.
It's such a level of maturity, and it's a true leadership for someone to be like, you know what, I'm sorry this offended you. I'm sorry this happened, and let's move on together. I have learned my lesson.
Yes. Pastor Hell gave a very intellectual and analytical response. And I normally love that. And I love that, but I don't have that right now. Mine is totally emotional.
Yeah.
Mine is totally from the heart. We have friends in Israel, in this where we live, and then we moved here from New York. So I've never not been, the Jewish community just part of my life. In fact, I went to seminary across the street from Jewish Theological Seminary. I went to Union, and across the street is JTS.
Yeah.
And so we shared professors, we shared classes. So I have an emotional response to things. I think Netanyahu is not a good guy. I don't like his politics. I don't like his policies. And Hamas is evil. So here you go. Where you love the people of both places and you hate the leaders of both places, that already complicates it so much. And Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's not the legitimate government of Palestine. The Palestinian Authority was booted out by Hamas. Yep. The legitimate people who could negotiate peace treaties and whatever, they are not there anymore. They were taken over by terrorists. Now, does Israel respond way too harsh to that? Well, we can have our opinions.
Right.
But Hamas did a terrible thing. Now, were the Palestinians mistreated? Certainly. But Hamas isn't their representative, isn't their spokesperson, isn't even their legitimate government. Hamas did a terrible thing to people who have experienced throughout history multiple pogroms and a Holocaust in the memory of some people who are still alive.
Right.
And so this is a very, very complicated situation where there are where nobody's the hero and nobody's the completely bad guy. And the criticisms, though, are seeming to me to be increasingly anti-Semitic, where just, those bad old Jews, like where Hamas is getting a pass and Jews are the bad guys. I'm willing to say that Netanyahu is a bad guy, but he is not the voice of every Jewish person. He's not the voice of every Israeli. And so this is way too complicated. I wish that Palestinians would be treated better. And there are Palestinians in the Israeli government. But I wish that situation was better. It's too apartheid-like, I think. And Hamas is no one to negotiate with. They're not a legitimate government. They don't even recognize Israel's right to exist. And so how are they to deal with Hamas? I don't have an answer. I probably wouldn't do a great job with it. So I have a very emotional response to all this because it's almost a no-win situation, and you're going to create enemies no matter what side you take. And then if you see the complexity and you don't take a firm side, well, then you're just wishy-washy and helping nobody. Right. It's an impossible situation, and I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I love Israel, and I can't emotionally let Hamas walk away from this squeaky clean.
And I think when you take the chance to pull the lens back just a little bit further, and you have what's going on there, but you got Russia and Ukraine, and you have this, and my thought has been throughout, if you focus on peace, and not the means by which you get to peace, but just focus on peace. What does that look like when you got all of these entities? Like, let's talk about peace and what does it mean, and how can we, bring people back to the table to take care of the Hamas groups, to take care of whatever's going on with you, and let's talk about peace and what peace might look like in these regions. And I really agree with everyone who's saying this is a long history. This was before any of us was even a mere spark of dust in any of our parents' eyes, and yet there has to be room for people to really say, let's bring peace talks back to the table. And I'm waiting for the leader to stand up and say, let's do this. I'm waiting for the leader who's challenged everyone to say, we've all been made uncomfortable. These are bad situations for everybody on both sides, on all sides, and in the world. Let's focus on peace.
We need a Nelson Mandela. Yeah. We need someone who is committed to reconciliation and peace and healing without giving a pass to what happened. Why what was happened was terrible, and how can we create a healthier situation? We need Nelson Mandela.
And Desmond Tutu. You know?
Yeah, and they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. And we do need peace, but I am very clear that what peace cannot look like is the Pax Americana.
No.
That is not, or that model, which I think that, like the model, and that's not what peace is.
And
I like that at this table we are looking at it from a both and position. What was done on Hamas's part can never be forgiven, and we have to be sensitive to know that sometimes we can go too far. Sometimes we make mistakes, and we have to be able to acknowledge that maybe a mistake was made. I look back, we're in the middle of a holiday season on the Christian side where we are venerating a baby who was, when he was born, was dragged across lands to go to someplace else to be counted. So this is not just today. This was yesterday, and it will be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And none of us at this table is claiming that we have a solution.
Right.
What we're saying is that we acknowledge that the Middle East has always been that place where issues occur and where answers are few and far between.
Right. But there's also a theological memory that needs to be expressed more, particularly in places like religious places and churches in general, where we have to understand that the Hebrew prophets are very clear on how to go about what is happening today in not just in that part of the world, but in the entire world. And there has to be an understanding that, yes, this is a nuanced issue. It's very complicated, but we have to approach it from if we're going to approach it from a theological perspective, we have to approach it from an honest and authentic theological perspective where the atrocities happening on both sides need to stop. And there's no if or buts about that from a theological perspective. So geopolitical perspective, that I'm not going to get into that. But from that perspective, there has to be something done to stop the killing of children, the killing of innocent people on both sides of that spectrum.
Agreed. I agree. Absolutely. And I love the point you touched on, Kevin. We are venerating a homeless, born child, questionable paternity, occupied territory, refugee in Egypt. Now, these are according to the stories, and who knows if they're all literally true or whatever. But the story that we have is about taking care of and being aware of, and even being in awe of the vulnerable and marginalized.
Right.
And so if we're going to add religion to it, religion is not on the side of violence.
No.
And I would just have to add that if that story is told this year for Christmas, I think it has to be told in a different perspective altogether.
Oh my goodness.
Did you see the Lutheran church in Bethlehem?
Yes.
Where the crash is rubble from bombs?
Yeah. We have to tell the story differently this year.
Yeah.
Next up, we are excited to tell you about our next adventure with our Global Fellowship. In 2024, we'll be going to where the hills are alive as we explore Austria and Alpine Europe for Gay Oktoberfest. Space is limited, extremely limited, so make sure to go to happeningout.travel/sunshine to reserve your space now.